Hello, everybody. Welcome to the guest pod. I am JT Dubs, and I'm joined today by my guest, Brady Drake. Brady, go ahead and say hello to the lovely people at home.
Hello, people. So I guess we start out by saying kind of what I do. So personal
Well,
information.
actually,
I guess I
first
just
let's.
graduated from Jacksonville State. Yeah,
Oh, nice. Hey, let's
yeah,
send out the stream link real quick over social media,
got it.
and then I will interview you about all your personal information. So let's see. Let me go
Mm-hmm.
to my YouTube and get the link to this.
Looking it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a pain having to do this every time, but it definitely increases the viewership.
Yeah,
Because if nobody knows it's happening, it's kind of tend to not get a ton of views.
that's right.
All right.
There we are.
So Brady, tell me a little bit how graduation go with Jack State. Was that you graduated in May?
Yeah, May 3rd actually. So pretty recent. So just been applying to lots of jobs and had a couple interviews and things like that, of that nature.
That's cool, man. What do you want to do?
So I got my bachelor's in special honors in marketing recently, and so that's what I'm kind of trying to do for the most part is really just work for some sort of company where I can just kind of work in their marketing department. And I've one pretty good lead that should hopefully turn into something soon. And I've had a couple interviews so far as well. So
That's great, man.
keeping options open and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I still have another few semesters, so I'm not quite there on the graduation train yet, but I'll be there soon.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
I don't know if I've really seen you much in general since high school. How did you like college a lot? I haven't really seen you much since then.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed college. I think most of our communication since high school ended was without fail every single time in September when South Park would come back on.
That's
I don't
true.
think I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I was actually thinking before we did this one, I was like, the South Park movie just hit its like 20th anniversary. I might have to have you on the show again to talk about. We might need to talk about that movie at some
Uh,
point.
oh, I could do that. That's for sure.
Yeah. What did you? I don't know if you and I ended up talking about like kind of our final thoughts on the last season, but I thought season 22 was like just a massive improvement over the last couple that they had before then.
Oh, it's not even really comparison to be honest. They went back to what worked in the past of having mostly just random episodes and some like sort of side B plot that kind of links up. And it definitely works for them a lot better. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
well, and they also just kind of brought back the old style of humor because
Yeah,
for at least a couple of years, it felt like they were really trying to like. It felt like they were ambitious with the storytelling, but totally just playing it really safe with the humor. Like it was nothing was really that offensive or that out there. And I mean, I think people kind of watch South Park for the really out there, offensive
yeah,
humor. So I mean, and I feel like they kind of touched on like current events in the right way, as opposed to just I don't know, it just being like politics
I
and
agree.
stuff.
I agree with that.
But yeah, we'll just send out the link for a couple more minutes, and then once we do that, we can.
Yeah, I've got mine posted a couple places.
Yeah. just sending it to as many people as I can who are pretty reliable viewers. That's what you gotta do when you're starting out small. You have to remind your viewers that you're
That's right.
streaming. But eventually, when you make
You're
it big,
still there.
yeah, when you make it big, you don't have to remind them anymore. They just, kind of do it.
That's right.
It's not like Matt and Trey have to remind us when South Park comes out.
No, we figure that out for ourselves.
I am curious though that this season coming out this fall is the last one they're like currently renewed for. Like they haven't extended their contract, and it's getting pretty
Yeah, I
close.
don't
So
know.
I'm
Are
kind
they
of
gonna have more?
yeah, I'm getting kind of nervous. But I wouldn't be surprised, and this is
I don't know.
totally like this is just me throwing it out there. I don't feel like they're done with the show because I feel like if they were done with it, they would probably have decided by now and probably would have announced that this season was going to be the last one or something. I feel like that's kind of what you do if you like really are planning on ending a show. But at the same time, I would not be surprised if they let their contract like run out and then they maybe I don't know, like maybe took like a
Yeah,
couple years off or something. Like I could see them taking a break or something, just to give themselves time to kind of I don't know recoup on what they want to do.
true.
See, just gonna send this out to a couple more people, and then I should be good to go. But yeah, man, can you believe it? SpongeBob's been out for 20 years now. So weird
It's
to me.
really hard to believe that it's been out for that long.
It's
That
just
I
like
was, like
surreal.
2 years old or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, something like that. It's
when it
crazy.
came out.
Oh, Brady Ben said he's gonna watch the episode as long as you're not in it. So I guess you're gonna have to leave.
Got
Just
it.
kidding.
Well, I can just wear like a hood over my face or something, and they
Yes.
just won't know the difference.
All right. Well, I think we've sent it to enough people. I think we got the word out a bit. So to everyone who's just now joining us, I'm JT Dubs, and this is my guest Brady Drake. Brady, go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
All right, so yeah, I just graduated with my bachelor's of marketing from Jacksonville State University, and so Jackson and I went to high school together, graduated at the same time, and basically, what I started doing about Christmas break of right before my last semester, I wanted to do it for a while, so I started just kind of writing my movie reviews and TV shows. So basically, over the break, I kind of just made a website, and on Christmas Day, I actually released my very first article, and just have been pumping out a lot of them ever since. And Facebook page, Instagram page, Drake Brothers blog is what it's called. And so yeah, I'm just really enjoy movies and TV shows, and just kind of want to write about them.
Yeah, I actually put the link to your website in our description. So anybody who
Mm-hmm.
wants to check out his website, it's you and both your brothers.
Yes, yeah. So I do the most of this stuff just because everyone has different schedules and things like that. But they also periodically will also put out articles, and so you can see who's authored what, with each individual article.
Yeah, that's cool. I've done a lot of film review videos, but I've never actually written a review. I feel like that'd be a pretty cool. It seems like it's sort of a different way to do it, but I don't know if
It
it
is.
seems like
It's
it'd be a
pretty
lot.
different.
It seems like it'd be cool because you could just write out all your thoughts and edit it, and it would be a lot easier than.
It's different format because you can have like a 2-3 minute read about a review of a movie. Then this kind of setting 20-30 minute like really in depth looks. So it's kind of just pretty different ways to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you could be a little more articulate too when you're writing, just because you can plan it out better. And sometimes I'll be on this show
You
and
can
I'll
edit it and
yeah, sometimes I'll be on the show and I'll be like I'll like think of something in the moment that I won't have thought of beforehand, and other times I'll have like done a review and then after I like finish it, I'm like, why didn't I mention that thing? I could have mentioned, whereas when you're writing, you have a lot more of kind of that ability to.
that is true.
So today we are going to talk about both the SpongeBob movies in honor of the SpongeBob 20th anniversary.
That's right.
I think the like big birthday episode they did, I don't know, they did some kind of special episode for the 20th anniversary like last night, so I felt like doing this
Yeah, I haven't
podcast
seen
today
it.
would be
Yeah,
pretty good. Yeah, I haven't seen it either. I've heard people talking about it online, and I've seen a couple clips of it. Apparently they're doing like part of the episode is like a live action version of SpongeBob, and that like the voice actors are actually like playing different versions of the characters. So it looks interesting. I don't know.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, with newer SpongeBob, you never know how the quality is going to be. Sometimes they could get out some good episodes, and other times it's like, what were y'all thinking? This is so bad.
it just like really like the first 3 seasons are by far the best because like every single episode is going to be a good episode. Yeah, but then since then it's kind of it's maybe not. Just depends.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I'm a huge SpongeBob fan, so I've known kind of what's going on with the show since it. I wouldn't say since it began. I mean, I know I've been watching long enough to the point to where when I started watching it, the only episodes that were out were season one, because you can tell by the animation quality, like
Yeah.
what is the first season, what is everything else, because there was like a huge jump in animation quality between the 1st and second season. But so I mean, I've been watching it for years. I've been keeping up with it.
Oh, yeah.
I probably watched it consistently, like I'm talking every episode, until probably about, I don't know, 10 years ago. Probably it was, I don't know, it was maybe 2009
Probably about the
ish.
same for me.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, I think that was maybe season 6 ish for the show. But I remember I loved the first 3 seasons. Season 4 was okay. Season 5 was kind of bad. And then after that, it was just, for a few years, it was just like really, really bad.
In limbo. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the first SpongeBob movie that we're talking about, that one came out in 2004, and that was, I think, that was like right after the first 3 seasons like
Yeah, it
finished.
was. And
And I,
that's kind of to me where it kind of changes a little bit after that first movie came out. Things started to be a bit different from then on.
for sure, I mean, I think with the SpongeBob movie, it kind of went into, this is a big money making franchise for
Oh yeah.
Nickelodeon. Whereas beforehand, it was just a really popular show. And so once that movie, I think, kind of solidified how successful the franchise was going to be for them, Nickelodeon was like, we're not ending this. We're not ending this ever as long as it stays profitable. And I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that all like everything SpongeBob related makes up for like 1/13 of Viacom's like total profits
Oh,
every
it
year,
probably does. I don't doubt that.
which is insane that one
Yeah.
property could make like a giant mega
Oh
corporation
yeah.
like Viacom like 1/13
Oh
of their
yeah.
money. That's insane.
I can say that I'm not quite sure like how popular the actual show is now versus what it used to be. Just because like some kids that I know, like 8 or 10, they don't really know what SpongeBob is to be honest. So maybe it's just the people that I know, but some people just aren't even sure what the show is about anymore. Just be like new kids coming up.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily how long it continues for. I mean, I think because of how big of a franchise it is, I think it lasts a good bit longer. But I mean, because if you had asked me 10 years ago if I thought it was going to make it 20 years, I would have said no.
Well,
And the fact that it has
yeah.
now, I'm like, what?
Well, I'm pretty sure they're trying to do a prequel show now.
Yeah,
So that's
which is pretty. Have you heard the story about the spin-off show they're doing where Stephen Hillenburg, rest in peace, the creator of SpongeBob who died last November, he was apparently not a fan of them doing spin-off shows. In fact, he pretty much refused to let them do it. And then they waited a couple months after he died, and they're like, "We're going to do a spin-off show."
Yeah, so my theory was right that some people the other day is that basically like they already had this planned out and ready to go for when he died, essentially, to go and have this ready. Because I mean, like, there's no way they got all that together just in a couple short months after he died.
Oh yeah,
that they already had this together. Yeah.
Well, he was diagnosed with ALS, I think, like 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
it was pretty imminent that he was going to die at some point in the next couple of years. So but that's just so shady of them to just wait for this man to die. This man who has just given them so much, like has
Shady.
it made them so much money. They're gonna just betray him and wait. And one of the showrunners or old writers on the show I think he actually called them out on Twitter for it, so you know that it was not cool of them to do it. So it's
Oh
really
yeah,
shady. I won't watch it. I mean, I don't even watch the show anymore, to be honest. Like, I see a
I
ton
don't
of
really
clips of
either.
it online, and from what I see, the new episodes are. I think the new episodes look pretty hit or miss. Like, I watched a couple of the newest ones, like the ones that have come out in the last couple of years, and I don't know. It seems like they kind of got a little bit back to sort of the old writing style in certain ways, but in other ways, it's like the animation is way too over the top, and it's like the animation looks good, but then
I agree with
it's
that.
it's like way too exaggerated. Like the color on it and the quality of it looks great, but they just the style they chose is very like Ren and Stimpy for some reason. So I don't know why you would do that, but I
Yeah,
have sort of seen in the old SpongeBob seasons versus the newer ones, it really went from being something that felt inspired by like Rocko's Modern Life to something that seems more inspired by Ren and Stimpy because it got way more slapstick and way more like gross humor, and it just they did a lot of just
oh
disturbing
yeah,
episodes over the years that
yeah.
they would have never done in the first 3 seasons.
I agree. Yeah, actually, just this past spring, I rewatched the first 3 seasons. To be honest, on Amazon Prime. So, and like they
That's where I've
still
been
held
watching
up
them.
just as much as I remember too. Yeah, exactly. They still
Honestly,
hold up
they're
just as I
better.
remember as a kid too.
They're better as an adult because you get all the jokes as opposed to when you're a kid
Well,
and a lot of
yes,
the
sure. You
jokes
get
just
every
fly over your
single
head.
joke this time. Yeah.
I think my only problem with the first 3 seasons is I've watched them all to death, so I sort of I'm watching them and I just know every line, so it's you can't get that same experience that you could like as a
Oh
kid
yeah.
watching them for the first
Well,
time.
except there was one episode that I somehow missed as a child, I didn't even know about until I saw it, and it was the Valentine's Day episode.
Oh yeah,
Like I
because
didn't even
that
know it
one
existed
they
until I
only
came
aired it.
across it. Yeah.
They only aired it like once a year. That's what they did with all the holiday ones. Was the Christmas special is pretty hard to miss because they played it like every Christmas and they would
Oh
play
yeah.
it all the time. But the other like holiday ones from maybe like the first season kind of fly under the radar a bit. But yeah, I mean overall
Mm-hmm.
though, like it's you can't argue. I mean whether or not you want to argue the quality of the show as a whole, I think you can't argue the fact that it's had such an impact on people our age and I would say people younger, people maybe a little older than us too.
Oh
It's been a
yeah.
whole generational. I mean, all the memes that still happen with SpongeBob now, you can't
Oh
escape
yeah.
SpongeBob in American culture. It's pretty much the equivalent of a modern Looney Tunes, I guess, and that Looney Tunes was so popular and iconic in its time.
Agreed.
Yeah. So let's move on. I guess let's get on to our first actual review. We're going to talk about the
The
first SpongeBob
movies.
movie. It's just called the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I think at the time they were only intending to make one, so it was kind of the. But it was this one came out in 2004 after the
Yeah.
first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It was the last thing for about 10 years I think that Stephen Hillenburg worked on for the show because Stephen Hillenburg left after the first movie and then came back for the second one and came back I think to the show a little bit after that. So pretty much both movies kind of are two different points in the show's history. But the first movie basically
They are.
is directed by Stephen Hillenburg, of course, and it's the plot is basically
Mm-hmm.
SpongeBob wants to get the manager position at the Krusty Krab 2, which is the second Krusty Krab, and he doesn't get it because Mr. Krabs thinks he's not mature enough, thinks he's a kid, gives it to Squidward instead, which makes no sense because Squidward would be a terrible manager. um, but then Plankton
You run
tries to
that place into
frame
the ground.
yeah, Plankton tries to frame Mr. Krabs for stealing King Neptune's crown, which he's a different King Neptune in this movie than he is in the show, which is kind of weird. But so SpongeBob and
Which
Patrick,
look,
what's up?
yeah, that's one of the things that yeah. As far as the King Neptune thing, that's one of the things. Like even as a kid, it just really confused me about like why was he not the same person, kind of a deal. But yeah, whatever.
Well, he's just a different
It's
King
one of those
Neptune.
things.
I think they're two different characters pretty much. Like you could say that they have the same name, but they're basically two
Yeah,
entirely different characters. But yeah, so
I think
SpongeBob and
so.
Patrick go on a big epic quest to get the crown, save the town of Mr. Krabs, and It's a really, really, really funny movie. I want to
Oh,
start off by
it's
just
awesome.
saying I, I watch this movie probably once a year at least, and I think I watched it a couple months ago
Oh,
with some of my
so
friends. But
yeah.
I'm surprised when I come back to it because I'm like, this movie is, even though I've seen it over and over, like I still laughed out loud probably 20 times, and I was watching it by myself.
Oh yeah.
So that like it's just
Well, see,
so
yeah.
well written.
I saw this movie twice this year already without even knowing about doing this podcast at any point later on because I watched it by myself once when I was like late at night at school. I was like, I'm bored. I'm just gonna watch the movie. And then one of my friends who had never actually seen it before, and so took me by surprise that he had to watch it. Obviously, so showed it to him too. So I've already seen it twice this year so far.
Wow. Yeah, it's great. I mean, the animation was such a step up from the show at the time, and really, I was watching it, and I thought to myself, what is it about this humor that really like just kind of strikes a chord with me, and really is something that I enjoy. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, the majority of the jokes are just kind of unexpected. Like they throw a lot of things at you that are just really funny and out there, and I don't know, like this, especially with this movie, I don't know, they take sort of more risks with it than they would with a regular SpongeBob episode. Like SpongeBob doesn't get the promotion; he goes to an ice cream bar, and he and Patrick get drunk on ice cream. Like,
Oh
like
yeah,
I didn't, like I
completely
didn't get,
wasted.
I
That's
didn't
the
get it. I
yeah.
didn't get it as a kid, but like now I'm like, that's hilarious. Like, uh,
I just thought it was funny as a kid because they were acting weird, right? But now I'm like, no, they're pretty wasted, right?
well, and he
uh,
wakes up and he has a hangover, and then he shows up at the Krusty Krab and just like tells Mr. Krabs off like during this like really important time where Mr. Krabs is like about to get killed by
oh
King
yeah,
Neptune, and the whole sequence is just so funny. And then King Neptune like lights
oh
Mr.
yeah.
Krabs on fire. Mr. Krabs is running around. Oh, me pants is on fire. Me underwear's on fire. I'm on fire. And it's just,
I'm on fire.
and then the whole joke with King Neptune is that the whole reason he even cares about his crown is because he's going bald and he's like insecure about his bald
The
spot.
bald
Like that's
spot. And there's the
bald,
guy screaming,
bald,
"My eyes! His eyes are
my
burning!"
eye. Yeah, like
Yes.
it's just they don't
Uh,
miss any opportunities for great jokes. And then the whole sequence where they're
no.
SpongeBob and Patrick are in that tough guy bar, and the bubble blowing, like
Yes.
and you think like, oh crap, like these guys are gonna like just destroy SpongeBob and Patrick, and they're like, no, we're gonna play the Goofy Goober theme music and see who reacts to it. And the whole time
That's
SpongeBob and
right.
Patrick are just
Oh,
like
like
they're like
the
sweating and they're
yeah.
like melting. They're like they can't resist it. It's just so stupid and so funny. Like,
Well, the joke that starts out that scene is probably not one that a lot of people will quote necessarily, but I'll do a name drop here. Brant Wheeler, if you remember, he went to
yeah,
JSU with me and stuff too. A line that he says constantly from that scene is when Patrick, opens the door to the bar, everyone stops and stares, says, "May I have your attention? I have to use the bathroom." Now, just for some reason, one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, and I don't know why.
well,
It's
the
just
way
perfectly timed.
yeah, the way he delivers it's perfect, and that's what I'm saying is the humor. Everything, every joke is unexpected. Like you expect it to go one way, and then they take another direction with it that is just funny. And that's the thing I think a lot of
Oh yeah.
comedy movies fail to do is they just write a joke and they write another joke like after each other, but they don't take the time to like think, okay, this is what you'd normally see in a movie, and then this is like the funny weird SpongeBob version. I mean, they do so many weird jokes too, like the beginning when just Patrick shows up to the ceremony naked, like just he flies in with like a SpongeBob flag like in between his butt cheeks, and
The
I'm just like,
flag.
yeah, it's like this
Oh
movie
yeah.
is made for like children and parents to go see, and they just do these weird jokes that
They
would
just
be in
go
like
for it.
a yeah, they're just these jokes that would just be in like an adult stoner movie or something. Like it's just so out there.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't know, and then I don't know. I'm trying to think of some other good examples, but just every time SpongeBob and Patrick come across some kind of uh, like danger or trouble or something, like usually they almost always get out of it through like just stupid luck, and it's just hilarious. Like when they're in the trench and
Well,
they're in the trench and they got the fake
the trench with the
mustaches.
"Now That We're Men" song. Yeah.
Yeah, and then these monsters are about to kill them, and they just start doing this weird slap thing on their bodies, like to the beat, and
Which
somehow that just makes the monsters think they're cool, and they're like, we don't want to kill you now because we think you're cool. Like is and then they
which I
do
mean,
like
like
this.
if you were growing up at that time, yeah, you
Well,
were
they
all
do
some
they do
you
this
did this
slap
at some
thing.
point when you were a kid growing up.
Yeah, and they do it for like it goes on
Yeah.
for like 30 seconds. Like it's it's such an over
Yeah.
it's like a kind of an overdone gag, but it's perfect because it's just so funny and so out of left field. And I think that's what I like most about the humor in the movie in general. Is I think as a whole, it's consistently funny. It's just they take. I feel like with the plot of the movie, it's weird because the SpongeBob show is usually like the plots are usually pretty mundane. It's just something goofy happens to the Krusty Krab, something SpongeBob
Yeah.
annoys
Oh
Squidward.
yeah.
Like the plots are usually pretty mundane for the most part. I mean, they're hilarious, but they're very simple situations.
Oh yeah.
But the movie kind of follow. I think it follows more or less the structure of the hero's journey, which is weird to talk about something SpongeBob related that would follow such a a well-known kind of I
Oh
guess
yeah.
I don't know, kind of story structure in fiction. But really, I think the film pretty much is almost a beat for beat the hero's journey type of story, and it works really well, and it culminates really well with I think a pretty powerful message at the end that SpongeBob just realizes like you know you just got to be yourself, and that's all you really can be. You can't try to be something you're not, and I think they do it in a way that is, it's fairly straightforward. But for SpongeBob, it's like actually a pretty
Yeah.
like powerful message, which you don't see in the show like hardly ever.
Yeah.
It's
It is.
usually just gags. And I think that's another thing about this movie is it takes itself a lot more seriously than the show ever does. I think there's like maybe that episode where SpongeBob loses Gary that they can play kind of serious, but other than that, like the whole show
Yeah, that's
is
true.
is very like jokey. It's never they almost never play anything
Oh yeah.
serious ever. That's kind of unique in its case in that like it's kind of like Seinfeld, I guess, in that Seinfeld never played itself
Oh
serious
yeah.
ever for any reason. It was always just about the humor, and SpongeBob's kind of that way too. But I do find that with this movie, personally, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ask you how you feel about this, but I feel like as a movie, it is fantastic. It's really, really well done. But I
Oh
don't
yeah. No, like
necessarily think it
it's
represents.
extremely well.
I don't necessarily think it represents the show as well as it could because it's very, very different tonally,
Well,
and
how I see this movie is that this is where the switch happens is in this movie. Now the movie still was a really good movie to be fair, but like it's just a couple of things like like don't the things that I put in as like my issues. I've written an article with this one before. Is that if as a kid I was like that part didn't make much sense, then I would keep it now. As in like the Neptune thing. The other thing was like, well, the Krusty Krab 2's never been spoken of again in the TV show. And just like you can see that the shift from that movie there on, it kind of is different
well, the reason that the
in
Krusty
that
Krab 2 is
regard.
never mentioned again is Stephen Hillenburg has gone on record saying that this movie is actually the series finale. Like it takes place after everything else, and the reason that they basically made it so early is because it really was going to be the end when they originally planned it. Like he was only planning
At
on
that
doing the
point,
3 seasons and then the movie, and then he was going to be done. And that's why he left the show is because he was pretty much done with it. And then Nickelodeon was like, we want to keep
he
doing more
wanted to be done.
seasons. And the reason that it was such a shift after the movie was because I mean the original crew that made the first 3 seasons, they made this movie and then pretty much all of them left. Like I think all but maybe a couple of them did, and then the couple that remained
Yeah,
like pretty much left after like the next season. So season 4 onwards was
yeah,
pretty much an entirely different crew of people. So I kind of I don't like the later seasons as much, but I will say they were made by people getting paid to make SpongeBob, not by people who like were passionately like creating SpongeBob like the first 3 seasons.
About making it. Yeah.
Yeah, like those people had the vision to
Yeah,
make
I
the
agree with
show,
that.
whereas the people afterwards, I think they tried to do their best with what they could. I don't necessarily think they did a terrible job either, but I think they were being paid to make
Right.
something that was already a success. They weren't creating something new that they were probably like that passionate about. But
I agree.
yeah, I think. But yeah, I think I was gonna just say like I do feel like this movie is definitely. I mean, it's definitely very different from the show. I think like when I was younger, I kind
It
of thought
is.
of it. I kind of thought of it as being just like a long episode, but really, I don't think it is that much. I mean, in terms of its humor, it's a lot like the show, but I think in terms of its the fact it actually has a like story with like real consequence and real stakes
Yeah.
is totally different from the show, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into a little bit with, like for instance, a sort of a tonal shift. I feel like that's different about the movie than even the early seasons or the later seasons of the show. I don't feel like Plankton is really that evil in the show, but in the movie, he's like really, really bad.
He's pretty evil in the show.
like
In
he's
the movie, sorry, in the movie, he's pretty evil.
like he hires a hitman to kill
He
SpongeBob
does
and
bad
Patrick.
things in the show, but like, I mean, that's a pretty big deal, Like
I think the
literally, you're
worst
having
thing
someone
he
kill people.
Yeah, I think the worst thing he does in the show is I don't know, he like takes over SpongeBob's brain in that one episode, or I guess he like
I mean,
kind of
that's pretty diabolical, I guess.
yeah. I mean, but he's like cartoon villain in those movies or in the show. Like he's very like,
Yeah,
and he's kind of meant to be
or
non-threatening because he's this little guy who's just kind of got a loud voice, and he's like this genius, but all he cares about is the Krabby Patty secret formula for some reason. So
he was in the movie. He literally mind controls everyone in the whole town. So like, he just goes a step further than that one episode. That's for sure.
yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say if it's the finale, maybe he's just gone totally insane by that point and just doesn't care what he has to do at that
It would
point.
make sense.
But it well, and SpongeBob's never really had much continuity, so I mean, they could kind of do whatever they want with each episode and each
No.
iteration. But it did feel definitely just a little different. Like, and again, not a bad thing. I think you had to up the stakes a little bit, but I'm not sure necessarily if it was totally the right call to make Plankton as evil as he was, just because it's it's not out of the realm of possibility for his character, but it just feels way further than anywhere he would ever go in any other version of the show.
Yeah, well, I guess making it Plan Z is like this is literally last ditch attempt to make it work. So I guess since it was his very last plan, for that movie, that's why that could be why it's so like out there and so evil, really.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But overall, though, I think I would see. We've talked about the humor. The animation's really good. Another thing with the sort of unexpectedness of all the jokes. David Hasselhoff, best joke in the whole movie. When he shows up, that's the best thing like that they ever did in SpongeBob history. Like so, like to me that is just like perfect humor.
When he's about to shoot him off down towards Bikini Bottom, like the chest expands, and they're just staring at him wide eyed, like really confused or in awe of what's happening.
I know. Apparently, I've watched the behind the scenes that they did with him on the DVD for the SpongeBob movie, and he says like, "Yeah, I never really watched SpongeBob. I think my daughter liked it. She wanted me to do it," and he was like, he just doesn't get it. He's like, "Yeah, I say my name," and they're like, "Yay!" And he's like, it's funny, and and then he walks in and they've got like the just giant like you've seen the pictures of like what they did to like during the scenes where SpongeBob and Patrick are on top of his body on his back. They actually took like a giant model of him and like put it in like a pool or something, and it had like a motor on it. Because clearly there's the scenes where he's swimming and it's like it's not a person swimming because he looks like he's just a motorboat just like sticking out of the water like It's just so funny. Like
That's
I
pretty
don't know
good.
where they came up with that idea, but whoever did, I mean, that hats off. That's like the funniest
It was
thing
pretty
probably
good.
in
Yeah.
SpongeBob history. I can't. Maybe that and is mayonnaise an instrument are like probably my two favorite like
Oh yeah, that's a
SpongeBobisms of
classic.
all time. I mean, it's so great. But anyway, let's move on to the second movie. So pretty much there,
All right.
the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, is like the second movie. It came out in 2015, I'm pretty sure, and it was directed by Paul Tibbett, who was basically Hillenburg's right hand man. But I know that. Oh, and Tibbett was the one that took over the show after Hillenburg left after the movie. But Hillenburg, I think, was a producer on this
Mm-hmm.
movie, so he had some involvement in it, and it definitely shows. But pretty much, they went 10 years after the first SpongeBob movie, and after about 10 years of this being like just a massive success, I think the show was really not doing too hot at this point. I think that's why they did this movie, was
The
because
movie.
the ratings were going like I think pretty like down, and the show in general and its quality had just gone to like an all-time low. And so I think they just got the old crew from the first three seasons back together to make another movie to kind of like rejuvenate interest in the show. And I
Yeah.
definitely, when rewatching this last night, I definitely thought this is definitely something that is trying very hard to emulate the first three seasons. I would say almost even
Yeah,
more so than the
the
first
past.
movie does. A lot of the jokes and a lot of the sort of style of humor is a lot like the first three seasons. It works in some ways, and I think in other ways it doesn't quite work. But overall, like it definitely, I think, strikes what they were looking for in terms of they wanted something
It
to
was a
emulate
pretty
the
good
first three
attempt, I
seasons.
think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you want my honest opinion, I think that this second SpongeBob movie is probably the closest they'll ever get to something that is in that same vein of the first three seasons. I think now that Hillenburg has died, and I'm sure a lot of the writers are moving on, and I don't necessarily know what the state of the show is right now, but from what I've watched of it recently, it doesn't look very good, and I think that this Sponge Out of Water movie is probably the last thing they will have ever done to kind of capture that original magic, and I think going forward, I don't really see anything like this coming out. Because I mean, the movie also, in certain
Yeah, I can
ways,
agree with that.
this movie also is a little bit more of a cash grab than the first movie because they kind of tried to sell this like, oh, there's CGI in the real world, and to marketing, and it's kind of this one definitely seems more like something that they could just kind of made to
Well,
appeal to as many people as possible. But
yeah,
they do it well though. I'm not going to say they do it poorly. Like this is a
true.
pretty competently made movie. Brady, just tell me some of your thoughts. What did you think of the second SpongeBob movie?
Well, they weren't out of water as much as I thought they would be, considering the movie title. But I mean,
Which
what
I'm
parts
glad.
were
I
actually,
like the
on dry land? Yeah, was pretty good, I would say. I mean, Antonio Banderas, I guess. I mean, being the pirate one who stole the formula and such. So,
yeah,
I
he does a
mean,
good job.
he's always good, I guess, whatever he does. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's pretty different, having plankton and stuff to them, and yeah, it's interesting. I saw this one in theaters without even meaning to go watch it in theaters because I was like 6 or 7 other guys in school. We were going to watch Chappie, so I haven't seen it to this day. Technical difficulties. Really, they just wanted an extra theater for Cinderella at the time, so they just said they couldn't show that movie anymore. So like, yeah, now we don't see Cinderella, so we saw this Sponge Out of Water instead. But
Wow.
I mean, I don't. It's probably a better movie. I haven't seen Chappie to be honest, but I mean, it was worth it. I say seeing it when I did. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
You know,
it's. I say overall, the first one means more to me. I would say probably. I mean, one I was a kid and one I was a senior in high school. I guess there's a difference there, but
yeah. Well, and they're just two very different films. I was gonna say, I think what I was kind of getting at earlier with how the first SpongeBob movie is a really great movie, but it doesn't necessarily represent the show in the best, or
it's
not
different. Yeah,
necessarily doesn't represent it. It's just very different. This movie, in my opinion, represents the show very accurately.
the tone
Uh,
the tone is more like the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's got more that sort of familiar tone, and also they utilize the majority of the main characters, whereas in the first SpongeBob movie, they only really utilize a couple of them, and like a lot of the other
That,
characters are just kind of in the
that's a good
background. Like
point.
Sandy has like no role in the first movie at all. She's like two lines, but in this movie, she's actually like treated
She's
like a
barely
regular
in, and
character.
Squidward's in it a
So
lot more, and things like that too.
yeah, it feels more like kind of what I would think of like a SpongeBob movie. Not to say I didn't like the first one. I think the first one's a better movie than this one is because it's structurally has a much better plot. I think the humor is better in the first movie. This movie, the second one, it has a lot of good jokes, but it also has a lot of jokes I feel like kind of fall flat and just feel more like
Yeah,
it's the same guys 10 years later trying to do the same shtick. Like it doesn't work as well.
yeah, it's not as quotable as the first movie. Which when I like watching movies that are pretty quotable, and the first one to me is the second one's not so much. But I mean, there's still some pretty good jokes that I would say, throughout the film.
Yeah, I think what I will say is probably better about this movie than the first one is, oh my god, the animation, like the 2D animation in Sponge Out of Water is
Yeah,
the best animation SpongeBob has ever had and may ever have, to be honest. Since it sounds like they're kind of moving in the CGI route now, but the 2D animation in this movie, which is about I don't know 2/3 of the movie or 3/4 of the movie is 2D animated, and it looks beautiful.
oh
Like
yeah,
it's the best the show's ever looked. And I like the style they went for in this movie a lot more than the current style they're animating the episodes in, which is way too exaggerated. This is like a good balance between kind of what they
hmm
did early on and just utilizing the better technology they have now.
yeah, I agree with that because there's just a lot of like just I feel like there's a lot more expressions that he would not have done earlier in the show that he does a lot now in the show, which just does make you feel different.
For sure. And just, I mean, I think I also noticed with this movie, it felt like all the voice actors were really trying. Whereas in some of the later episodes of the show, I definitely felt like it seems like they're kind of phoning it in. Like from time to time, this actually felt like something that everybody involved with like was trying. And I don't think this movie
Oh yeah,
totally lands, but I definitely think that every person involved seemed like they were actually trying and having fun with it. And I respect what they did with it. My biggest issue with this movie, and you may agree with me. I'll let you tell me what you think of this, but I think the plot to this movie
all
is
right.
way too all over the place, and it really lacks focus for the majority of it. And because of that, this movie works a lot better as like some kind of weird drug trip than it does as like a functional like plot, in my opinion.
You know, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just because the first one to me had just a pretty simple plot. Thing gets stolen, wrong person blamed, heroes go to get it back. That's pretty simple to follow. Where this one, like, it does kind of, it has a hard time, I guess, staying focused is maybe one way to put it on what they're trying to do. I don't know.
Well, it feels kind of like it feels a little bit like maybe the studio wanted them to do one thing and then they wanted to do another thing. Like it seems like the whole time travel apocalypse plot was kind of what they wanted to do with it with the 2D animated section, but then
Oh yeah,
it was like the studio was like, no, we need a CGI. We need to do CGI. We want them in the live action setting. Have them get there somehow. And so there's sort of a shift in the movie around the time that like SpongeBob's
oh
doing
yeah,
his like SpongeBob's about to like get sacrificed, and then they smell the Krabby Patties. It's like at that point the movie shifts from being one thing to a totally different thing in the span of like 2 minutes,
oh
and
yeah,
it's I mean it's perfectly ADD and it's perfectly SpongeBob to do something like that. I mean that's kind of the tone of the show is just random and weird, and
yeah.
I think for the most part I really do think this movie works. It's just upon repeated viewings, I don't think I enjoyed as much as the first one because it just is too all over the place. They could have, I think they should have just gone with a couple different ideas instead of like every idea, incorporating everything. I mean, it's every 10 minutes the movie is kind of
I
about
agree.
something different. It feels like. I mean, first it's like this like war movie where they are like fighting over the secret formula. Then it becomes this like apocalypse movie. Then it becomes like a time travel like stoner movie or something. Then it becomes they're going
Yeah.
live action, and then it's like a super. It's like it's almost like a live action like Alvin and the Chipmunks thing, but better. And that's like these CGI characters in the real world, and then it becomes a superhero movie in the last 20 minutes. So it's
Yeah, somehow. So
it's like everything. Like they
I don't
throw in
know.
every idea, and it works for the most part. But I think it's just a little too much, like to cram into an hour and a half.
I mean, it'll definitely entertain kids and stuff, you know. I guess if that's the main goal, then they definitely succeeded in that. But as far as like, you know, the people who grew up watching it, it just depends. Because I can understand why some people wouldn't like it that much, but I can also understand why you might like it a lot, you know, if you grew up with the show.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people I've talked to about this movie, a lot of people like my age that saw it, they said they really didn't like it, and I don't know. I mean, a lot of the people though that say that are usually comparing it to the first movie and saying, "Oh, the first movie was way better," and I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean,
Which
that
it's
was a
hard to do.
it felt like the first movie was a passion project for Stephen Hillenburg and his crew. This feels like, hey, the show's not doing too well. Let's go back and kind of do what we did in the beginning and make it good, and see if people like it. And
Mm-hmm.
like I think for it wasn't something they had to make. I think it was just something that like they could have easily
Right.
phoned this movie in and made it just crap. I mean, because people would have seen it anyway. Like they didn't need to make
Oh
it.
yeah.
They didn't need to try as hard as they did with it. And I think for the effort they put into it, I think it was good. I think it just too many things at once,
Yeah.
And I know they're talking about there's gonna be a third SpongeBob movie, but I think it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be all CGI. So I don't have an interest in seeing it. I like the 2D animation better, at least for SpongeBob. It looks way better.
Yeah. Which, you know, from normal critics, the movies aren't that different in scoring for like Metacritic and places like that. Like they're not that far apart
Really, what are the
because
scores
the
for them?
first one's only like rated a little bit higher. So like if you're looking at Metacritic, which again Metacritic is pretty hardcore in all their ratings, they rate that most things don't make that high, but the first one is 66, the second one is 62, which again
Really?
Metacritic is very very much like they're very harsh in their ratings for things.
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna say.
definitely a more lenient grader. I'm definitely more lenient when it comes to my stuff. And I'm kind of
Yeah.
interested what like Rotten Tomatoes had to think about the first two movies,
Well, and you gotta imagine too. I mean,
audience
these
scores
are
and things
a lot
like
of these
that.
critics are probably adults that have never watched the show. So I don't know if
Yeah,
you can necessarily get as much enjoyment out of something like this if you aren't a fan of the show, because
you really can't.
it's I mean I don't know, it's sort of a state of
You really
mind. Like
can't because like
we grew up with
I'm
it and
looking
they
at
didn't.
like I'm looking at the first movie here. It's just it doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're telling me that only 77% of the audience like this movie. There's just no way that's true. I've never met someone who's just a regular fan who doesn't like the movie.
Oh
So I
yeah,
don't
I
know
don't.
what kind of people are rating this movie. You know?
Yeah, I mean I've even when I was a kid, I mean I watched this movie with family and they still enjoyed it. Like I'm not sure if it was really their
Oh
type
yeah,
of thing, but I mean like I think like you can't watch it and not laugh at some of the jokes. And I mean this I guess I think my biggest complaint about the first movie, and it's funny because I think my biggest problem with the first movie is something that kind of is almost the biggest problem with the second movie. And I think in the second movie they kind of went too far in this direction, but uh, the whole climax is totally undermined by the Goofy Goober Rock sequence. It's really funny and it's totally out there, but in terms of like, it's
yeah.
not necessarily very fulfilling as a climax to a movie because it's the heroes are stuck. There's nothing they can do now. Musical number. Everything's fine.
And then
You
just
saved the day. Like, I mean, maybe I'm taking it too seriously. Maybe I mean, because granted, the David Hasselhoff thing was my favorite moment, but it does feel like kind of just a Deus
yeah.
Ex Machina to just be like,
Which
rock music
I
saved
mean,
everybody.
I guess it feels. I guess it's technically following what they're doing throughout the whole movie anyway, but just having random crap happen that really isn't anything to do that's normal. But I mean, yeah, either you like that part or you don't. I guess it just depends.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mixed on it. I think it's good. I don't necessarily think it's a satisfying
May
conclusion.
have you like basically like I probably would have ended it a little differently, I suppose.
Well, and there's no setup for it. I think I was watching. I think I did watch a review of this movie a couple years ago, and they were like, if you're gonna have this sequence where SpongeBob saves everyone by doing this like rock number or whatever, like I don't know, you have a scene earlier where he's like playing guitar or something,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
you set it up a little bit. I mean, sure they set up
just
the Goofy Goober thing,
yeah,
but they didn't set up how it would translate into that. It was just
how he's a wizard guitarist, basically.
and it's great. I mean, I
That's
think
what it was.
yeah, I mean, it's funny and
Yeah.
it's well done. It's just you could have set it up a little better. It would feel a little bit more natural, and that's kind of
Yeah.
the rule. I mean, one of the rules of cinema is if you're I mean, Chekhov's gun. You're gonna if you want like a good payoff, you want to set it up first and get that sort of idea, like that seed planted in people's mind first, and then pay it off. You don't just start off with the payoff and it's like, well, where did that come out of? That was out of nowhere. Like, it makes no sense. Um, but overall, Brady, what would you rate the first SpongeBob movie out of 10?
So, if we're going at it, do we use like whole numbers, half numbers? What are you going for?
Generally on my show, we do just 1 through 10. Generally for me, a 5 is average, and anything above a 5 is good to great. A 10 would be like for me, a 10 would be like a movie that I may or may not have some flaws, but overall I just have no complaints about.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then like anything below a 5 is just
well,
middling to bad.
Put it in perspective. The movie posters behind me are all 10s, in my opinion. Jurassic Park, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I guess if we're going in that regard, I'd probably put the first one, whole number wise, I guess about probably an 8. About an 8, and the second one probably about a 5. I would say 5 or 6 if we're going in that category.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what I would do. I think I thought about it a lot. I think I would rate the first movie a 9 out of 10, just because overall, for like what it's trying to be and what it is, I don't think they really have too many flaws with what they're trying to do. Like, they had a pretty good vision of like, this is going to be a funny movie, but it's going to have some heart, and it's going to be like a good conclusion to the show, like what they thought was going to be the conclusion of the show.
Yeah.
And I think for that, like, I don't find many flaws in it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like when I rate on my articles, I just do like letters, like A plus, A minus. I think I put an A for the first one.
Yeah, usually
A plus to an F, that kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of people either do that system or the 10 or the 5 stars, usually something like that. But so yeah, for the first movie, I'd give it a 9. The second movie, I think I would give it a 6. But like if I had to rate it on its own, not as a fan, I'd probably give the second movie like a 5. But given just that personally as a fan and as someone who just sort of enjoyed, just someone who kind of enjoyed watching them come back with that style of humor, and even though it wasn't perfect, I was glad to see like some level of kind of fan service coming back to the franchise. And like I said, I don't necessarily see the show going in a great direction right now, so I think that I don't know. For what it is, the second SpongeBob movie is pretty enjoyable, and like I said, the only real issue I have with it is I think not all the jokes land perfectly, but also just the plot is messy. So I think a 6 is probably about balanced of what I would really give it, because it's, objectively probably a 5, but I enjoy it a lot, and I like how trippy and weird it is too. I like that they kind of like experimented with it, so I'd give it a 6.
Yeah, I mean, who am I kidding? I was supposed to be the first one too much to give it something low, so probably an 8.5 or a 9 is more accurate. I was trying to be a hard-nosed critic for a second, but yeah, screw it. I like the movie too much.
Yeah, I go back and forth on my ratings for things. It just kind of, I mean,
sometimes.
Well, I usually rate something based off of my previous, like my most recent experience with it. And for me, like the first SpongeBob movie, watching it the other day, I had like a 9 out of 10 experience. The only, like I said, there was a couple details in the plot that were just a little too. I don't know. We're kind of dumb, and so for me, it brought it down to a 9. But um, I don't know. I like to rate things based off of my previous experience, and then the second SpongeBob movie, which I watched last night, I
Makes
certainly
sense.
enjoyed, but not beyond a 6. I kind of felt like I'm not really laughing at this one as much. It's kind of messy.
Mm-hmm.
There a couple scenes in there. A lot of the live action is not bad, but some of it's kind of like groan inducing. Like it's kind of like I really we didn't need
Indeed.
all this. Like it's
Yeah.
just go back to the 2D animated stuff. That stuff's really good. So yeah, I think overall though, I mean, for considering 2 animated movies and they were 10 years apart, I'm glad at least that the second one wasn't bad and that they put some effort into it, because it probably could have been a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll get SpongeBob movies in the future that are less than stellar. So
Well, yeah, we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'm not holding my breath. I'll probably just keep watching the old episodes that I love.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Brady, thanks for coming on the show. Is there you want to give yourself a little plug real quick? The link to Brady's website, he does film reviews. It's in the description. Anything you want to say, Brady?
Yeah, so DrakeBrothersBlog.com. We have a Facebook page if you want to follow us there. Again, Drake Brothers Blog. We also have an Instagram page, and so we post probably 2 or 3 probably 2 articles new every week, while we post other things, polls, and like we just did a Disney movie poll. What's your favorite one from the '90s and things like that. So follow us there, and you can keep up with us. We try to post something as often as possible.
All right. Well, Brady, thanks for coming on. It's been good talking SpongeBob with you, and maybe one of these days we'll get back together and we can talk some South Park or something.
Sounds good too. All right.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching the Film Pod. I'm JT Dubs. Oh, this is the part where you can say your name.
I'm Brady Drake.
And you've been watching the Guest Pod.
That's a perfect way to end it.
Yes. You've been watching the Guest Pod. See you guys next time. Happy 20th anniversary, SpongeBob. Rest in peace, Stephen Hillenburg. Peace out.